recording. And I'll introduce myself, Wendy Himes with Vision Serve Alliance, and we're very excited to have all of you here for today's edition of Small But Mighty, the Vision Serve Alliance Small Organization Affinity Group, or SOAG, as we affectionately like to refer to ourselves. So we are excited to present some very some guest speakers, which we hope you will find useful. And Deborah Gold has been so wonderful at helping to set these up. And I'm going to turn things over to Deborah to introduce today's guest speaker.
Great. Thank you very much, Wendy. It's a pleasure to be here. Looks like many of us are still or continue to be in our homes. Thanks, Christy, for the chat shout out. I'm really proud and pleased to be part of the small organization affinity group, and to be able to bring a few great people who specialize in small orgs through their lenses to talk to us and maybe help us out with some of the challenges that we experience that are unique to being in a small organization. So I'm pleased to introduce Christy today, and I'm just going to bring up her bio as soon as I can. I've got two things open. I had it here, honest. Here it is. Okay, so Christy Porter is a copywriter and consultant who helps nonprofits and social impact companies get noticed and grow through effective marketing and communications. She also teaches solopreneurs, as she calls them, and small businesses how to incorporate easy philanthropy strategies. Essentially, Christy makes cause-focused organizations look and sound more professional so they can build and engage a larger audience, increase sales or donations, and do more good. You can tell, Christy, I chose the medium bio from your media kit. And I just wanted to say that I first encountered Christy by listening to the podcast that I've turned some of you guys on to, which is The Small Nonprofit. And Christy was interviewed, I guess, about a year ago, I'm not sure, somewhere in 2021, by Cindy Wegman, who we've also had at the group. And so I'm going to flip it over. I was so impressed with the sharp, it wasn't a very long interview, but you got a lot across in a short time, and I thought I'd reach out. And so just flip it to you. Thanks for coming, Christy.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. I am a fan of Cindy as well, so I'm glad we have her in common. We actually met in a Facebook group a few years ago, I think, and have kept in touch. So yeah, she's a terrific resource, and I'm excited to be here with you guys today. And we're going to talk a little bit about marketing. So I don't know how much you guys get to talk about that, or more importantly, I think a lot of you guys are executive directors, so I don't know how much you get to focus on that. But we're going to hopefully clear up some things today for you. The other thing I love to start with saying is just a lot of times I hear people at small nonprofits say, oh, we need to start marketing. We need to start, getting the word out. And my response is always, well, surprise, you're already doing it. If you're talking about your organization to anybody, you're marketing it. So we can always get better, and we're going to add some intentionality to it today, but you are marketing. So congrats on jumping in. And now we're going to make it even better. So let me share my screen. Okay, let's see. All right, so today we're here to talk about how to create a clear and consistent brand message to attract your donors and partners, because I know that's what you're all after: more donors, more partners. Side note, some of these will also work for volunteers. So as you'll see, this is a really, it's intended to be a really versatile component of your marketing and help you to get better and better. So let's see. All right. It's going to let me flip through. There we go. So introductions, Deborah did that. Thank you. Always so much easier when somebody else introduces you rather than yourself. It's a little awkward. So first, let's talk about expectations. So we're all on the same page. I know you saw the description that was sent around, but I want to make that a little bit more concrete for you. Oh, and we also, am a big advocate of note taking, so take notes, but I did tell Deborah and Wendy that I will email you this presentation so that you don't have to write furiously and risk losing a point. And then of course, you'll also have the recording as well. So however you tend to engage, go for it. So first of all, I'm here to be the bearer of bad news that it's not enough just to have a great message. I wish that it were, but competition is fierce and you need a clear and consistent message to set your organization apart. So we're going to first talk about the importance of a brand message, perhaps define that a little bit more for you. We're going to talk about questions to refine your message. And then of course, I'll tell you how to put it into action in a few different ways. And then Deborah also asked me to address a few ways to make time for marketing, because I know that that often gets put on the back burner with all of the fires that you're putting out every day. So we're going to discuss a few ways to do that as well. And then of course, we will have a Q&A at the end. So I can't fully see the chat right now, but pop those in there or save them to the end and I'll be sure to give you that the answers to your questions. So let's see. All right, so the takeaway here is that your marketing is only as effective as your message. So you've got to have that strong message that others can relate to, identify with, buy into. So let's first dig into why a strong brand message is important. I know many of you probably spent hours, days, weeks longer developing that all-important mission statement that you took the time to develop and then slapped it up everywhere you could, which is great. We're going to talk about how to make it even better though. So a strong brand message is how you do that. So tell me if any of these sound familiar. You ramble on and on when somebody asks you what you do. I hear that one all the time, all the time. So rambling is the struggle is real. You've lost perspective when it comes to knowing what to say and how to say it when you're in a conversation with somebody, because everything is so important to you. So trying to figure out those little pearls that you should pick out is really difficult. You don't know what to say to how to create excitement for your mission other than just conveying that mission statement. You know you have a fantastic mission, but your marketing doesn't convey the same people. So of course your greatest marketing asset is your people, but maybe when you show up online or in your own presentations or in conversations with people or just trying to put pitch decks together, things like that, it just doesn't sound as good as your people do. So we're going to help clear up that as well. You can't clearly articulate why someone deserves your support over another organization. So a few years ago, I sat down, was having just a coffee meeting, introductory meeting with an anti-trafficking organization. And I'd known about them for a long time. And I just, blankly asked them, hey, if you were trying to get my support versus the other organization down the street, why should I invest in you and not someone else? And they did not have an answer. They didn't know how to communicate that. Another thing that you may be experiencing is you don't understand why partners aren't excited to work with you. Again, you know how great you are, but you're having trouble getting that message across. And then finally, maybe everybody on your team communicates in a completely different way. If I ask one person about your organization, they give a different answer than you would versus another person. And so you're not even speaking with the same language when it comes to your mission. So perhaps some of these sound familiar to you. These are what I heard from people. Deborah, do you have a question? Oh, is your hand up? No? Okay. All right, so if you related to any of these statements, you are not alone. So that's the good news, but you need to refine your brand message. So that's what we're going to talk about. And when your message reflects your mission, then people will automatically be attracted to your cause, which means that you can increase your impact. So I know that's what you're all after. So let me back up for just a second. And I know that you've probably heard the term brand 100 times, but you may be thinking that's a really marketing word. A brand is a logo. What is she talking about? First of all, a brand is not a logo. Think of your organization as a person. So if I look and talk to each one of you, you're all in different places, you have interest in different things, you're getting different amounts of snowfall, as we all learned when we got started. So think about brand as the personality of your organization. So it's what you look like, what you sound like, how you show up for others, what you do, who you benefit, all of those are aspects of your brand. And so when you have a strong brand message, you can really clearly communicate what you do, why you do it, and of course, most importantly, how people can get involved no matter what area of that stakeholder engagement they come from: donors, partners, beneficiaries. So that is why a brand message is so important. And here's what it can help you do. You'll attract the right customers and donors instead of spending time wasting all your time and effort on people who may never get past that one-time $25 donation. So you'll find the people who really, it'll help you attract the people who really want to support you. You'll become a leader in your industry because you'll speak with a clear, bold, straightforward way about your organization that really helps people sit up and take notice of you. You'll be able to, as we talked about, communicate why you are the one that should be invested in, why your organization matters, why somebody should really get involved with your mission. You'll also you'll be able to craft an exciting message that everybody on your team communicates. Maybe it's just that you communicate a different way every time. So this will kind of help shape your language and vocabulary. And then of course, the ultimate goal, you'll be able to expand your reach and help more people. So this is the next 10 questions that I'm going to give you for how to define that clear and consistent brand message. These are just a tiny bit of what I go through in a one-on-one service. So I was trying to figure out how to squish this down and be able to communicate it to you guys. So I came up with just these 10 major questions for you to focus on to help really clarify your language and give you a stronger stance to promote from. Okay, so first of all, you're going to start internally. This is where you're all used. This is the ground you're used to standing on. So I have a background in public relations. So we learned about key messages. So if people could only know 3 things about your organization, what would those be? Really hard, because everything is important, right? Everything matters. Everything is so dear to your heart. But if I said, hey, you only get to tell me 3 things, what would those 3 things be? And then once you define those are the most important aspects, then they should show up over and over again everywhere you are. So those are your key messages. Think about if you had to distill your work down to just a few things, what would those be? Second, which we've mentioned a couple of times already, what makes you different than the other nonprofits like you? This is an alliance of people, which is fantastic. So I know you're already supportive of each other, you're learning from each other, but you're also all different. So you're not saying you're better than someone else, you're just saying you're different from somebody else. So what makes you different from others like you? And then third, what is the problem you solve for each of your stakeholders? Each of your stakeholders. So no matter how someone is involved with your mission, whether they're a donor, a partner, a beneficiary, you benefit them in some way. So perhaps, I know you're probably most used to and most comfortable talking about how you benefit your beneficiaries, how you help people who are struggling with blindness or vision issues. That's the easiest one for you. You're probably solid on that one. As far as maybe a donor, you may think, well, we're getting their money. We don't really benefit them. They're the ones giving to us, but you do meet their need in some respect. So perhaps if I was a potential donor, maybe my grandmother had macular degenerative. I'm not saying that correctly. You guys will know better than me. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So let's say that was an issue that I really wanted to get involved in because it touched me personally and I want to make a difference in this issue. Well, you're meeting that need for me. So it can be a very physical need. It could be an aspirational need. It can be a felt need, but there's something that you do for each of your stakeholders. And that's what you need to figure out how to communicate to them. Fourth, how are each of your stakeholders, how do each of them interact with you? So is it more online? Is it in person? How are they coming into contact with you and how can you speak more directly to them? So you can't benefit everybody. You can't talk to everybody all the time. So whenever people interact with my website, for example, if I'm writing a blog post, my goal is for somebody to come back and say, did you write that for me? That is exactly what I'm struggling with. And you want the same thing with your with all of your marketing. So it could be a social media post, for example, that's specifically focused on talking to one group. It could be a specific page on your websites that's devoted to one particular group. But think about how you're interacting with them. And then fifth, I know this is something you already spend a lot of time doing, thinking about who are your ideal donors and partners. How much data do you have on them? If you're at a really small organization, perhaps you don't have a ton of data yet. You're still learning, you're still getting used to it. Maybe you're brand new. So you're still trying to collect that data and trying to guess. I'm going to give you a tool for this later on, but the more you can define those ideal, the keyword being ideal, not anybody that has $25, but the people who want to give me $1,000, $10,000. How do we speak directly to them? What are their needs and wants? And how do we solve that for them? So I'll give you a tool a little bit later on that will help you get to some of this information, but that's a great question to ask yourself. So here's where we shift from what a lot of people are used to doing to probably what a lot of people are not used to doing. And that's really thinking from the donor standpoint. For example, when I talk to, all nonprofits start with the support of their friends and family, right? That's easy. Those people will spend all day for you. They've been on this journey for years. They'll let you talk about anything that's going on in your life and how you got there. They'll sit there and rejoice with you, cry with you, whatever it takes. However, a lot of nonprofits, when they start to grow or when they start to think beyond their friends and family, they lose the perspective that not everyone is going to give me 45 minutes to an hour. Not everyone is going to know my entire story. And so there are a lot of times I'll go to a website if I'm doing an audit or something similar, and it's not talking to anybody that other than the people that already know them, other than the people that already have been with them on this journey. So the shift here for you is to think about everything through the lens of what your donors, partners, what those people need. So what problems do they have? Like I said, is it talking to me who may have a family member who's affected to this? Is it me who has a diagnosis that I'm trying to figure out how to navigate? Is it a corporation that needs to start getting involved in cause marketing, and they're trying to figure out, are you the right person to partner with? So think about the problems that they have and how you solve them. This one, also the second one, how do your donors describe themselves? As experts in your industry, you have your own lingo, you have your own background, your own knowledge base. You've been studying this and been in this work for a long time, but donors may not call themselves exactly the word that you're using for them. Another easy language about this is, again, I have volunteered for a long time in the human trafficking space here. So a lot of human trafficking victims will not identify as victims. They don't see themselves that way. And so are you using survivors? Are you just describing the situation that they're going through? How do they talk about themselves? And how can you use their language? Because the goal in your marketing is for them to be able to recognize that you're the person who solves their problem. Third one, what traits and values are important to your donors? So what language should you use to talk about how do they describe themselves, and then what's important to them, and how can you talk about what's important to them over and over again so that they see this is the group I should be supporting, this is who I should be partnering with. Number 4 gets a little tricky for some people. What happens if people don't donate to you? So that's a hard one sometimes to think about, because you may think, well, they'll just donate to somebody else, or they'll just keep the the $200 or whatever it is. But there's something that happens that I think, without knowing 100% sure, you can still be able to touch on for people. So maybe it's you want to be part of this solution, but now it's going to take us longer to find this cure, or it's going to take us longer to serve this specific number of individuals that we want to serve this year, and we want you to be a part of it. But how can you shift that to them to talk about what will happen without them? How does this affect them personally? How does this affect culture, society? So think about the other side. You're probably much better at communicating what happens when they give. This is how people are served. But what happens if they don't? The last one here is, what is the process that someone takes to donate or partner with you? Sounds really simple in a lot of ways. For example, I hope a lot of you, your top right-hand button on your website should say donate now. That's the main action you want people to take, and that's where we all look for that action. However, let's think about other either volunteers, sponsorship offerings, things like that. If there are several steps it takes, we want to remove as many barriers as possible to people taking action. So if it's 3 steps, you call, we set up a meeting, we provide you with everything you need, and we get started. Outline it, take away any guesswork that they have, especially just to clarify the process, make it easier. There's no guesswork. You want to remove any barrier that's going to prevent them from saying yes. So your goal with this entire process, I've given you 5 goals. So one is just that shift we talked about, to be able to look at your organization from the donor or partner's perspective. Think about it from their end of things and not just yours. So, in kind of in line with this second one, shift to more you language. So if your website, if your marketing, if your brochures and materials all say we, I, our, and it's very inward focused language, think about how you shift that language out to say you, we, together, us, and really involve them in the words. I call it making your copy notable. So when people are following along on your website, they're saying, yeah, that's me. Yeah, I totally get that. Yes, I want to be a part of this. So really engage and involve them in everything you're saying, and think about it from their perspective. Number 3, really difficult to do, look for where you can say more with less. So is it we can actually condense what we're saying from 6 paragraphs into 1 paragraph in a 30-second video, but look for just opportunities. As a writer, this is deeply concerning for me, but people skim today. They do not read everything that you have to say. So make it easy for them. Use subheads, give them the points immediately, and then where to look for further information if that's necessary, but say more with less. Number 4, talk about your benefits, not your features. So you want to always convey the outcome. How is somebody on the other side of their engagement with you? So it's not just we provide glasses or doctor's visits. We do not, it's not just those, don't ever leave something as just a basic when you can always in your head say something like so that you have an outcome. We provide doctor's appointments or take care of medical costs so that every obstacle is eliminated for those who need a different way of life, who need to see the world in a new way, who need to know somebody who cares, who are experiencing a difficult transition in life after a diagnosis. So think about the other side of what people are after engaging with you, and don't just stop at features, which are things like leaving it at we provide glasses or money for doctor's visits or training on how to navigate your home. So always give them what that transformation piece is, because that's the part that people want to be involved in. And then 5, of course, I'm sure you've heard this 100 times from me or anybody else, collect your compelling stories. So you may start out by having very short testimonials that are only a couple of sentences long. Totally fine. Put those all over your website, not just on one page. Then, you can advance to collecting more compelling stories that are long form testimonials. Are people on video? Get a picture of them if they're comfortable with showing that, because you want to see the person behind this transformation as well. Same goes for volunteers. Same goes for partners or sponsors. Make that as real as possible. Put a human face on it. So now that you've done some soul searching, if you will, we're going to talk about how to put that into action. So I'm going to give you some more homework, sorry. So first of all, update audit your marketing materials and look for what needs to be updated. Everything from your website, brochures, social media bios, look for everything. Just make a list for now, make a list of everything that needs to be updated now that you have a little bit better handle on your language and where it needs to change. Your presentations, brochures, anything like that. Next, conduct any market research to help you find the answers you don't have or to gather more of that stakeholder data. And again, I'll provide you with a resource for that at the end. The third one, just start small. Begin writing your messaging. Look for a very small place that needs to be fixed. start there so you get more comfortable with it, get feedback, and then continue expanding out for there. But don't just start with, we need to rewrite our entire website, because you'll be overwhelmed, and I want you to take action and not just be stuck with a good idea. Then complete your revisions, evaluate this annually to make sure you're still on target. Heaven forbid something like a pandemic happens and everybody has to shift the way they do things. So it's good to look at this annually. Strategic initiatives may change. You may have to change the way you're doing, just offering your services. So that may change some language, but it's good to, you don't have to do a huge audit every year if you don't want to, but if you're like, oh, things have changed, or this is a better way to say this, or, when we use this phrase, people's eyes light up and they didn't do that before. So how can we work that in? So just think about looking, at least giving those a cursory look every year so that you can make sure you're still on target with your goals and your needs. And then here's where you also put it in practice for the people around you, for your public image, for your stakeholder engagement. So use your key messages that we talked about earlier. If people could only know a few things about you, what did you come out of that with? You can start using that as your elevator pitch, maybe, than what you were using before, or refine it, or shift it. Convey your why to customers and donors on your about page. Nonprofits are notorious for the about page just being a copy and paste version of their mission statement. And I know you worked incredibly hard on it, but people don't get excited to go to a page that just has a header that says mission statement. So how can you really talk about that benefit and that outcome? How are people different? Continue to expand on that on every page of your website, on every page of your marketing materials, because again, people are skimming around. You don't know how they got to you, what page they landed on first on your website. So make sure that's reinforced over and over again. Highlight your competitive advantage in your presentation. So what makes you special? What makes you different? What makes you worth investing in? Talk about that over and over again. Tell people again what could happen if they don't choose you when they're on the fence or wavering. You can't guarantee it, just paint a picture. And then feature the transformation you provide regularly on social media or in content such as blog posts or videos. People want to know that transformation factor. They want to know how you're benefiting people, how you help people. I know sometimes depending on what you do, you have to be more sensitive with material and perhaps using names or images. Totally fine. There are ways around that. But continue to just drive home. It's not that we just do this, it's we do this so that people can live differently. And here's what that looks like. Again, works for volunteers, works for donors, works for partners, works for beneficiaries. Story cell and transformation cells. So I want to shift real quickly to now that I've given you all this homework for how to make time for marketing, because I know it's not easy. There's always 1,000 things going on that you could be doing. So how do you squeeze this into your day? And I'm going to give you 4 options. Along with this, I do actually have a blog post that I'm going to link to you or give you the link for as well. So it explains these in a bit more detail, but I wanted to quickly go over them here for you. So rocks, stones, and pebbles. If any of you have seen, it's been around for decades, that illustration of where there's like a jar, and if you try and put the sand in first, the pebbles in first, and then try and stick the rocks in at the end, it doesn't happen. So there's a woman who I credit with this. She's a genius for developing this. So if you have a schedule that changes on the regular, every week looks different, this might be a good solution for you. So she has sort of this 15-minute planner. And again, you'll have the link to this. And so first of all, you look at your schedule and think, what are the immovable rocks? So it could be presentations like this. It could be a board meeting. It could be a potential donor meeting. So those are the things that can't be moved. So you're going to automatically plan around that. Then you're going to think about your pebbles in your day. So what are the things that have to get done that are non-negotiable? And then you'll stick those into your calendar. And then you finally fill it up with sand or pebbles, which are less important, that have to get done, but take up real time. So I'm sure we could all raise our hands for email on this one. Important, has to get done, not fun. But it's, it's not as urgent, or it may be urgent, but not as important. So that's kind of one method. The second one, learn to time block. This is my bread and butter. I've tried all of these. This one is just the one that works best for me and my personality. I really like deep thinking times. I like having committed times to work on different projects or planning or reflecting. So time blocking for you, time blocking could be an hour. One of my former clients, she reserved every meeting or every weekday morning from like 10 to 12 for meetings. And that was the only time she had meetings. Afternoon was her planning, thinking, get it done. For me, I was very much, I would do things like Marketing Monday. Here's where I would create content here. I have, and still, if you look on, if we're trying to have a meeting and I send you my Calendly link to book a meeting, you'll see that there's only certain times you can have meetings. So I block a lot of that off so I can get different things done. So whether your time block is an hour or 8 hours, either way, this can work for you. Like I said, this is my favorite. The third one, eat the frog, if you've ever heard that term. So it refers to a quote by Mark Twain, eat a live frog first thing in the morning and nothing worse will happen for the rest of your day. So basically it just means, what is the thing that's non-negotiable that has to get done that day? Do it first, so it's not you're not trying to squeeze it in at 4 p.m. And that also probably works better for morning people, of which I am not. And then the last one is get accountability. So the great thing is you already have a group of people at your fingertips who are on a similar mission and have a similar mindset. This is also really great if you are at a small organization, or if you're the executive director and maybe some of what you're working on is not appropriate to work with your peers, or you're working on things that are not yet to be rolled out to the team. So get accountability, look for someone outside your organization that can partner with you. I had early in my business, I've been doing this for 5.5 years now, and for about 6 months, there's a woman and we would meet together for breakfast every other week for almost 6 months. And we didn't even do a lot of talking when we were together, pre-COVID days, as you hear me say together, but we would sit there and it was just somebody to get things done with. I've seen it happen on Zoom meetings before as well, where people just show up to a Zoom meeting and that's your designated time to get things done. Don't have to talk to each other. You just want to get things done. It's also a great opportunity to bounce ideas off of each other, or how does this sound, or how does this feel, and just get that outside perspective that we can often lose in our own work. So I'm a big fan of accountability for that reason. And then I wanted to leave you before we get to the Q&A with some of these additional resources that I talked about. So these are all blog posts, why your social impact mission isn't enough. So this explains a little bit more for that brand message, why it's important and what it can do for you. There's 3 exercises for evaluating your brand story if you want kind of a walkthrough process. The Ultimate Guide to Social Impact Websites. This is a kind of a repository of blog posts that I've put together over the last number of years. In my opinion, and this was my soapbox long before the pandemic, but outside of your people, your website is your greatest marketing asset. So I spend a lot of time helping people improve their website. So those are kind of everything from reviews of different platforms to tips for writing better, to promotion and everything in between. And then the last one is what I just went over with you, how to make time for marketing. So there's a little bit greater explanation on all 4 of those if you want to learn a little bit more. And then of course, if I can help you create a better brand story, I'd be honored to. So you can get in touch with me at that link as well. So now that I've filled your heads with all kinds of things, what questions can I answer?
Christy, thank you so much. I was going to start off in the introduction with a little piece of something that we did at our organization based on your interview with Cindy. So I'll just say that that piece that you say about the mission and like all those words. Yeah. And I can't remember how you put it in the interview, but it was like, you know, what can you distill down and put on your front page? So I think on my bike on the way to work when I heard you say that, and I'm like, I have to get to the office and see what I can do. That's going to be really easy because I'm a small organization. I have direct access to the website. I'm just going to take the mission. So maybe if we have time afterwards, I'll screen share and show people what we did. just based on what you said during the interview. But thank you for that. And yeah, let's open it up for questions. And I take it you just want people to talk. They don't have to put them in the chat.
Sure. Either way, I'm open to whatever works for you guys. And I will just say also on that note, I kind of one of the phrases I use over and over again is that you refine your message when you repeat it. So I don't describe my mission in the same way today, 5.5 years later, as I did on day one. So you're always going to get better at talking about it. The problem is people get better at talking about it and then they never go back and make those updates. And so, 10 years later, it's the very first mission statement that they put together. And so we want to continue to make sure that everything you say that gets better and better, that gets updated across everything. So I love that. And I would love to see it. So, and I think we have one in the chat. Oh, Jeannie said number 4. That is me. Awesome. All right. What questions, guys and gals?
We have lots of time for questions at this point, about 16, 17 minutes. There's one in the chat. Can you give some examples of marketing research? You mentioned that this was the number 2 thing to do.
Yeah, so this can happen in any number of ways. And again, there's a very long blog post that explains it all and walks you through it a little bit better so you can kind of sit and think with it. But one example is a survey. I'm a big fan of surveys. So for example, I do my market research at the end of every year. I give a marketing service away as a holiday giveaway. And in order to have an entry into that contest, you have to fill out a survey. And that's how I collect market research every year. So it can be as simple as just creating a survey. People that, you can send out a survey through just your email marketing. You can also arrange one-on-one meetings is another way to do it. So if you need something beyond just what somebody might write in a survey box, then perhaps it's gathering or setting meetings with your top 10 donors. And you and your team have said, okay, these are the 5 questions we want to ask every one of those people. Why are they involved? What could we do to communicate our mission better? How can we engage them more? So you've come up with this list of predefined questions that you want to ask your top donors. And so you have a one-on-one with them. Maybe that's the best way to communicate them. And maybe you haven't done that because we've been in the pandemic the last 2 years and it's kind of stopped those. So one-on-one could be across the table at coffee. It could be across Zoom where you can record these lovely meetings. But make sure you're always asking the same people the same thing. So those are a couple ways to get it done. Surveys you're probably quite familiar with and have probably done a lot of those. I will say the more questions you ask, the less amount of responses you'll get. So just keep that in mind. Or maybe it's a very targeted, you don't send that out to your entire list. Maybe it is just you ask the people that you're going to, that are going to reply and you have a great relationship with. But again, the other caveat I'll give there, much like I said earlier, is ideal. So if your mother gives regularly, but it's not your ideal donor, then I wouldn't give her the survey unless you're just sending it out to everybody. So keep that in mind because you want to keep attracting more of the people that want to be invested, whether that's time, money, influence, whatever those resources look like to you. So I hope that helps, Christy. What else?
What are some of the big mistakes that people tend to make on their websites or organizations make on their websites? When you say that, you said outside of the people website is the best marketing asset. What are some classic errors that people make?
Yeah, so there are a few. One of the biggest I'll say is what I touched on earlier, where it is very much written for an insider audience who already knows and understands them. So I think that's the biggest is it never evolves as their audience evolves. And so I think that's a huge mistake because again, you want people to see themselves in your website and in your marketing. We all know that somebody could probably sit across the table with you or at a Zoom meeting with you and you could just pour your heart out and give a great presentation on what's important to you, why your organization matters and who it's touched. But you have a lot less opportunity to do that on the website. You have a lot less time. People are going to be skimming, so they're immediately going to be looking for their answers. And if you're only talking to them and using jargon they won't understand, then that's a huge miss because you only get a few seconds to connect with them. The other thing is just very cluttered, I think, is a big one as well. There's stuff everywhere. You're asking people to do all kinds of things. You haven't figured out what those key messages are to be able to communicate quickly and efficiently what you need them to know. So there's just paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs for them to read. Also keep in mind from that perspective that we're all reading on smaller screens these days. So you can always look in Google Analytics. Are most of your people looking at your website on, and it's actually, Google Analytics is incredibly overwhelming, but it's actually pretty easy to see from what I remember if most of your website visitors are coming from a desktop or a mobile. And so if you're, a website looks very different if you're looking at on a cell phone versus on a website. You have a lot more space to work with. And so think about it from that perspective. And if you haven't ever looked at your website on a cell phone, then I highly encourage that as well. So those are a couple of big things that can really make a lot of difference from just that user experience side.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Christy. I think that in our field, we get very focused on accessibility when it comes to the website, and that people who with sight loss can use it. And I've seen, including the one where I arrived to this organization 5 years ago, extremely accessible website that was as terrible as everything you've described. Every word that could be put on, I think it had 268 pages.
Oh my gosh.
That we counted when we went to revise. And the person who got the bid to create the new website was the same person who'd done the original, but she'd watched it get away from her through the organization's use of it.
Yeah.
And just this desire to put everything up there.
Yeah.
So, and it was still accessible.
Yeah.
Very accessible, easy for people to read, but I mean, where would they go to find what? It's
right.
It's a misunderstanding about that. So thank you.
And just think about from that point of view as well, and your audience, think about who's looking at every page. So if there is a page specific to partners, then do your partners need as heavy accessibility features as some of the other pages? Or how do you write it specifically with them in mind? How would you write the page differently if it's a beneficiary reading the page versus a sponsor reading the page? So you can also break it down from that perspective, both from functionality as well as aesthetic.
There's another question in the chat. We have 3 distinct service areas that appeal to very different audiences: children who get screening and pop-up clinics, people who are experiencing visual loss and impairments, and general eye health for adults that get glaucoma screening, education for various topics, eyeglass clinic, etc. It feels like our audiences only get excited in one of these 3 silos. Is it wrong to have 3 elevator speeches or marketing approaches?
I'm going to give you a yes and a no. So from that perspective, I have one core marketing pitch. You have the bio that Deborah read for me, and that's sort of how I explain myself as well. But depending on who I'm talking to, I will tweak that a little bit. So a lot of times I also use different language on my websites to appeal to different people. So I work with both for-profits and nonprofits that are doing good. I think they're kind of 2 sides of the same coin. I also think they share the same difficulty, which is the same difficulty that you're describing here, and that all of you struggle with, is that you have multiple people at any point in time to talk to. So for example, the term social enterprise is an emerging business model. So think of like Warby Parker glasses or Tom's shoes. Purpose is baked into the business model, but not everybody knows the term social enterprise. So that's why I also use the term social impact company. So if I'm talking to you and you're that, then I will stress that a little bit more in my presentation to you or my conversation with you, but the core message is the same. And so I would say to do it that way as well. A lot of the examples I gave you throughout the presentation were nonprofit examples because you're a nonprofit. So I think the core message is relatively the same, and then you just sort of accent different pieces depending on who you're talking to. Obviously, that gets a little bit more tricky whenever it's a static marketing piece like a website or a brochure or something like that. And that's, again, defining. Part of this is, part of the goal of marketing is opening up the conversation so that you do have the ability to sell them, in fact, on your mission. So think about who the audience is for a specific page, a specific piece. Maybe you need to have a couple of different marketing pieces that highlight one over the other, and then know who to send it to at any point in time, but you kind of have those at your fingertips. The other thing is, let me look back at your question.
Can I just ask one more question about that, or just make a suggestion as well? Would you say then, given Karen's example, I think it was Karen's question, that if you think about the website as a building, then you want your main door, you want to be able to come in the main door and see the directory on the wall. If you can see, obviously I'm making a visual reference here, but you want to see your options on the wall and be able to go directly to that floor, that physician, that person. So when I think about the website that way, with something where you've got these very distinct audiences, you almost want to be able at the door to see where you want to go next. One click and you are at the children's place, where that language is all going to be oriented to the kids' needs or their parents. And then the others would have their own. Do you feel like, does that?
Yeah, that's a great illustration. Yeah, for sure. And I don't want you to have 300 pages on your website, but it may be that you give them a short description and then link them off to another page that has a greater explanation. So again, the goal is just to open the conversation. You want them to contact you so they can get more information, but you also don't want your website to be so sparse that they don't get the answers they need to. So I also it was reminding me whenever I had that a few months back, I donated to an organization. To be honest, I don't know what software they were using, or if they were using a software. I thought it was genius. But as soon as I made a donation, I immediately got like a text and an email thanking me for that and reminding me of the mission and how it's going to help people. So I thought that was just a great way to follow up. So if they can choose on your website, even to the point of you have all of these three, do they want to give their donation to 1, 2, or 3? Then maybe it's possible to either, if you're handling that manually or through some sort of automation, that you can reiterate that one mission that they're highlighting, or that one service that they're highlighting, and then give them more explanation on that. Or, get on the phone with them and try and say, okay, what was it that, you made this donation for? How can I tell you more about that and what your specific impact can create? The other thing is, you mentioned, feels like your audience only gets excited in one of these 3 silos. Honestly, I would say to play that one up a little bit. Doesn't mean you leave the other ones out, but if that's where you get the door open, then I think you can also highlight that one a little bit more and give it a little bit more room when you market. So yeah, that helps.
I think Wendy, your box lit up, but you were on mute. So I feel like you tried to say something.
Oh, I was, you covered it all, Karen's question, and Karen says, let's get them in the building. That's right. Let's get them to your website. And then when they land there, we want them to be excited.
Yeah, think about your website as the other illustration I give a lot is your website is kind of your online welcome mat, right? It should be immediately appealing. It should be immediately get them to ask a question, to engage with you in some way, whether that's click around, get more information. But again, it also goes back to that market research. What are people looking for, and how can you be that answer to them?
I can ask a question. In terms of social media, there's just so many different platforms. How do you make that choice if you have limited time, limited staff available? How do you make, what are the most important moves or platforms that you would recommend? Or is there no one size fits all with that answer?
No, it really depends on where your people are. So you want to talk to them where they're already hanging out is the simplest solution for that. So if you're trying to talk to, if your current need is more on donors and partners, perhaps that's LinkedIn. You need to focus on that for a while. If it's really just engaging the people that you already have and they're all on Instagram or on Facebook, then go there. So in the other caveat I'll say to that, the most important thing is to meet people where they already are. The second is, again, to make it easy for you. There's all kinds of advice you'll find on, you need to post at this time, you need to do this many posts per day, you need to, whatever. It's a never ending cycle with social media, which is part of what wears it out for us all. But I would rather you do well and be consistent. If it's once per week, once 2 weeks, I would rather you put a lot of time and effort into doing something really well that's going to grab somebody's attention than just putting out something that's mediocre just so you got something out that day.
Excellent points. All right. Any other questions? I know that this has been such a phenomenal presentation. Christy, I'm so glad that despite our communication snafu, you made it work. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, at least I had an hour. If we had done this an hour earlier, I would not be on camera either because my hair would not be brushed and my makeup would not be on.
Thank you so much, Christy. I wanted to ask you one follow-up question about the social media question.
Yeah.
So I take it it's okay. It feels sometimes like there's so much pressure to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Can organizations pick and choose the most suitable social media platforms for them? So just because Meta says that WhatsApp for Business is a good idea doesn't mean it's a good idea for us, right?
Yeah,
Or
for
TikTok.
sure. Yeah, again, it's all about meeting people where they already are. So I would find one, and if you don't know where that is, then ask. That goes back to the market research question. If Facebook is what we're all on and we all know, and you want to start there and get better at it, and then expand into a different social media, then I think you can do that as well. There's also scheduling tools. So going back to that time blocking thing, if you want to set, Facebook lets you schedule directly in their platform. There's also other programs that allow you to do that. So for example, if you're like, we're going to post once a week, and that's it, that's what I can get done. And that's what I can do well. So maybe you just sit down and schedule those all at once in a time blocking session so that it's done ahead of time and it's done for the month. The other kind of caveats I'll give you, I actually don't really work on social media that much. As a marketer, you may find it strange that I don't enjoy it. And so the one reason I really focus in on this brand message as well is because when I was working on other projects for people like social media or launches or things like that, it all comes back to this. And that's why I really wanted to kind of, really settle myself in this space, because it all comes back to your brand message. So if you are posting constantly on social media, but you are always leading them back to a website that looks terrible, or they don't know what you're saying, or they don't know how to interact with you once they get there, then you've wasted a bunch of time on social media. Same thing with ads. People consistently think ads are going to fix my problem, and social media is unfortunately very much a pay-to-play space at this point. To get any significant reach, you have to have an ad budget. But the other side of that is same thing. If you don't have a strong brand message, if you don't have a strong brand proposition, if you don't have an asset that you're leading them back to, like your website that actually delivers on that promise and gets them to where they need to go, then you've wasted your money on ads. So to me, everything always comes back to your brand message. And that was kind of the thing that I kept seeing over and over again when people wanted all the shiny objects, but it really was just a waste of time and effort until they knew how to say in a really clear and compelling and consistent way so that people would be like, yes, I'm bought in. How do I engage with your mission?
I think an untapped resource is LinkedIn. We are using it more and more, and I really appreciate the professionalism of LinkedIn and the ability to share messages that can attract quite a lot of attention and have that feel. And I don't mean just for jobs or careers. It's really quite handy. And the amount of information and knowledge I pick up that I can then use in the job is also great, or repost, or find something that, an article will come up here in Canada from another organization, and it's an event that all our clients should know about. So I'm just finding LinkedIn quite helpful, in the disability space.
Yeah, they certainly, if you do want to go down like the advertising route or something, they certainly do not have the capabilities and metrics that Facebook does. They were first to that space and certainly have led the way to both my marketers' happy heart and my consumer sad heart. But it is a great space. And again, it comes down to your audience. Who are you looking for? Where are they hanging out? Is that a great place to reach them? But yeah, I would rather, like I said, I would rather you just be consistent and do something well than just to feel scattered and never do anything.
Well, thank you very much. Wendy, did you want to add anything before we let Christy go? Or does anyone ever have one last question to squeeze in here? I think, Christy, you've given us tons of ways to get in touch with you.
Yeah.
If people have questions or want to work with you, have you work with them?
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I'll send you guys this presentation so that you have that and can send that out to everybody. And so, yeah, you have all this information at your fingertips, and like me, you didn't take notes, and then next week you're like, what did I mean? So I'll get you those resources.
That's great. And we will send out the recording of today's presentation along with the slides once I get them from you, Christy. And we really appreciate all of your insights. This is fabulous. Branding is always an issue. We also set up just a very quick survey for everybody. You can fill out and give us your best takeaways. Actually, if you want to put your best takeaway from today's presentation in the chat, go ahead and do that now. And then we're also just going to send you this one, it's a very short survey. You can just give us your feedback on today's presentation and what you most enjoyed, and if other topics you'd like to see in the future. That would be a big help for us. So I'm going to put that in the chat. Should be a very quick Survey Monkey. And thank you very much, Christy. We have a little bit of time left, so we're going to talk just about other group issues we'd like to talk about, but we really thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, and more importantly, for all that you guys are doing. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Christy.
Bye, thank you.